At my sister's wedding, she pointed at me and said, "Meet my older sister, still single at 38, a walking reminder of what not to be." Her fiancé chuckled, "Guess some people just can't get picked." My hand shook as I clutched my gift envelope. Hours later, she opened it and found something that made her cry. What happened next was. Celia and I were never close. Growing up in Walnut Creek, I'd been the one doing the responsible older sibling thing, homework on time, babysitting her when mom and dad were out, being the dependable daughter. When our parents went through their messy separation when I was 17 and Celia was 11, I became the interim adult in the house. While I was filling out college applications and wiping away her tears at night, she was spiraling, cutting class, dating older guys, running wild. I took on a lot more than I ever admitted to. When I finally left for UC Davis, I felt like I was abandoning her. But I couldn't save her forever. She straightened out eventually, at least on the surface. Got into marketing. Found success in the tech world. And now she was marrying a man from a wealthy Marin County family. Me? I'd had one engagement. Travis. He left me 2 weeks before our wedding for someone he met at a conference in Denver. I never fully recovered from that betrayal. Since then, I'd poured myself into my freelance graphic design work, looked after our aging father after mom moved to Arizona, and kept things together the best I could. I wasn't flashy. I didn't need to be. But to Celia, my life was something to scoff at. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll admit. Everyone clapped and dabbed at their eyes. I stood in the second row, next to our mother, smiling even though I knew I was just part of the scenery. After dinner and the first round of toasts, the DJ opened the floor. Everyone was loose with wine and cocktails. Celia took the mic, her hand resting gently on Noelle's chest as she addressed the crowd. "There's one more person I want to acknowledge," she said, beaming. "My sister, Dana." I felt myself perk up a bit. Maybe she was going to say something kind, something warm. Maybe for once, she'd throw me a bone. She pointed toward me. "Still single at 38, she chirped, eyes gleaming. A walking reminder of what not to be, am I right?" There was a pause. A weird ripple of laughter. Then Noelle added, without missing a beat, "Guess some people just can't get picked." That time, the laughter was louder. Some people clapped. My mother's face stiffened beside me. I couldn't breathe. I clenched my jaw so tight I thought my teeth would crack. My hand instinctively reached into my clutch, closing over the cream envelope I'd brought with me. Inside was my wedding gift. Something I had debated giving for months. I didn't say anything. I didn't storm out. I just smiled, barely, and walked away to the back patio. I stood under the twinkling fairy lights and stared out at the bay, trying to steady my breathing. Why did she need to do that? Why humiliate me? Hadn't I always shown up for her? I organized part of her bachelorette party. Helped with the vendor list when she was overwhelmed. I had driven Dad to his suit fittings. I had done everything except kneel at her feet, and still, it wasn't enough. I didn't eat any dessert. I danced once with Uncle Ron. I laughed politely with guests. I stayed until the end, because that's what I do. And then, when it was time to open the gifts in the private suite they'd set up upstairs, I slipped away to the hallway outside the room and watched. They were gathered on the floor, boxes and cards spread out in a messy arc. Celia, still glowing, tore through tissue paper and ribbon. Noelle handed her my envelope. She barely looked at the handwriting before sliding her nail under the flap. Inside was a handwritten note and a small brass key taped to the card. She read the first line of the note, and froze. Her shoulders tensed. The glow drained from her face. She blinked fast, her lip quivering as she read the rest. Noelle leaned over, glanced at the key, and asked, "What is this?" She didn't answer. Her hands began to shake. She put the note down slowly, then got up and walked out of the room. I stayed hidden, watching her disappear down the hallway barefoot, bouquet long discarded. Let me explain what I gave her. 6 years ago, our grandmother, who had essentially raised me when things got rough at home, passed away and left me something in secret. A letter, a key, and a deed to a property in Carmel she had bought quietly during a windfall in the early 90s. It wasn't big, just a little seaside cottage. But it had history. Her handwriting in the margins of recipe books still lived in the drawers. She hadn't told anyone else in the family about it. Not Celia. Not our parents. Just me. For a long time, I kept it close. Visited it when I needed peace. It was mine, and I felt no need to share. But then, about a year ago, Celia came to me in tears, telling me how suffocated she felt. How she wanted to get away sometimes. How she wished there was a place she could go where no one knew her. That day, I told her maybe someday I'd help her find that place. And I had intended to surprise her on her wedding day, with the key. Not to the cottage outright, but as a shared gift. A retreat for the two of us. Sisters. I was ready to give her that. But after her little toast? After she looked me in the eye and called me a walking cautionary tale? I gave her the key anyway. But I rewrote the note. It read, Celia, once, I thought we'd grow to understand each other. That time would soften you. That maybe one day we'd laugh over wine in this place, and remember when things were different. But today you showed me who you really are. This key once unlocked peace. I'm giving it to you now to unlock reflection. We may be sisters by blood, but kindness is what keeps people connected. You broke that today. When she saw the key, she knew what it was. She remembered our conversation from that night. I saw it on her face. And she knew what she had lost. After Celia left the room, everyone was confused. A few people glanced around, murmuring. Noel looked mildly annoyed, holding the note like it was a riddle he didn't care to solve. My mother slowly walked over to him and took the card from his hand. She read it in silence. And then, for the first time in years, I saw something break in her face. Not confusion. Not anger. Something closer to recognition. She didn't say a word to Noel. Just walked out the door and down the hallway, presumably to find Celia. I remained behind a decorative column, hidden from view. No one ever expects the person who's always quiet, always obliging, to draw a line in the sand. But I had. The rest of the night moved in a strange, slow rhythm. People continued celebrating, completely unaware of what had just unfolded. Toasts, music, another round of champagne. But behind the scenes, I had set something in motion that couldn't be undone. By the time I made it back to my hotel room, it was nearly 2 a.m. I took off my dress and sat on the edge of the bed, still half made up, watching the city lights blink outside the window. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. But I wasn't sorry, either. Not one text came through from Celia. Not even a why. The silence lasted for 2 days. Then my mother called. Dana, she said slowly, as if testing the air, I read what you wrote. Okay. You could have just talked to her. I waited, listening for the rest. But she stopped there. She humiliated me, Mom. In front of 100 people. I know, she said, sighing. She went too far. I told her that. But, maybe she was just nervous. Or trying to be funny. She called me a walking warning sign. How is that a joke? Mom didn't answer. You always excuse her, I added, more bitterly than I meant to. Even when we were kids. I don't excuse her, she said quietly. I think I always expected more from you. Because you were always the strong one. That made me pause. I didn't know whether to feel insulted or validated. Maybe both. You know, Dana, your grandmother wanted that place to be yours, she continued. She told me once, years ago. She said you needed somewhere to breathe, away from all the noise. She told you that? Yes. She left it to you for a reason. You don't owe it to anyone. It took a few seconds before I could speak. I wasn't going to give it away. I was going to share it. Before all of this. I know. That's who you are. But maybe, you shouldn't have to be anymore. That phone call didn't fix anything, but it did shift something. I think for the first time, my mom saw how much I had given, not just the key, not just the place, but years of being the bridge between chaos and calm. I had always been the one patching the cracks in our family, even when it meant splintering myself in the process. The next person to reach out was Noelle. A text. Hey Dana. Don't know what the deal was with that key thing, but Celia's really upset. Think maybe you owe her an apology. We all joke around. She didn't mean anything by it. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked his number. He didn't get it. Of course he didn't. He'd grown up in a world where everything was handed to him. Where mistakes were swept under luxury rugs and accountability was optional. But Celia did get it. That's why she cried. She knew exactly what that gift meant. And what it meant to lose it. A week passed. No contact. Then my father, retired, quiet, emotionally distant but not unkind, called me. Which was rare. He'd spent most of his post-divorce life gardening in Monterey and pretending emotions were weeds best left unwatered. Just wanted to check in, he said. Yeah? You okay? I almost laughed. I'm fine, Dad. He cleared his throat. You know, when your mother and I were falling apart, you were the only one who held things together. I didn't say anything. You were 17. That wasn't fair. No. It wasn't. More silence. I didn't say thank you back then. So I'm saying it now. And just like that, something inside me softened. Not in a way that healed everything. But in a way that finally made me feel seen. I still hadn't heard from Celia. Until, 2.5 weeks after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside, just one short page. Dana, I don't know how to fix this. You're right. What I said was cruel. I thought I was being clever, maybe funny. But it was ugly. It came from a place I didn't even realize I still had inside me. I'm sorry. I know I can't take it back. I know I broke something that maybe can't be fixed. I've thought about that night a lot. About the cottage. About us. I'm not asking for the key. I just wanted you to know. I get it now. Celia, I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer of my desk, unsure how I felt. Not angry. Not forgiving. Just, still. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. And maybe that was the most surprising part. I didn't respond right away. I thought about that letter every day. I thought about how long it had taken her to say sorry, not just for the wedding toast, but for everything that came before it. And I thought about how rare it was, in our family, for anyone to apologize without a hidden agenda. But Celia had written it out in her own hand. No texts. No emoji-covered half apologies. Just ink and paper. That meant something. Still, I didn't know what to do with it. Some days I wanted to send the key back. Some days I wanted to burn the letter. And some days I imagined driving down to Carmel, unlocking that cottage door, and never telling anyone where I'd gone. I finally responded, not with a letter, but with an email. I kept it short. Got your letter. Thank you for writing it. I'm not ready to talk yet. Dana, her reply came the next morning. I understand. When you are, I'll be here. And she left it at that. In the meantime, life went on. Work picked up. I took on 2 new clients, one of them a small winery in Sonoma that needed a rebrand. It felt good to work with my hands again, to build something that had nothing to do with family. I spent weekends at the cottage. It sat on a quiet stretch of road outside Carmel by the sea, nestled among windswept pines and wildflowers. There was a white picket fence that leaned slightly to one side, a small brick path that led to a faded teal door. Inside was exactly how I'd left it, simple, a little worn, but peaceful. The walls were painted a pale yellow. The furniture had that soft, sun-bleached look that only time and sea air could create. I found one of my grandmother's old sweaters in the back of a linen closet. It still smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. There were no televisions. No loud voices. Just the sound of waves in the distance and gulls calling overhead. It was the first time in years I'd felt truly alone, but not in the painful way. In the necessary way. One Sunday, I drove back to San Francisco for lunch with my mother. She had been quiet since the wedding. Not cold, just cautious. Like she didn't want to trigger another landmine. We met at a small bistro in Hayes Valley. She wore her usual cardigan, pearls, and practiced restraint. I showed up in jeans and a white blouse, hair still damp from a morning shower. "You look rested," she said, scanning my face like a doctor checking for symptoms. "I am," I replied. We ordered salads and sparkling water. Light conversation. Then she leaned in, voice low. "She's been going to therapy." "Celia?" Mom nodded. "Started right after the honeymoon. Said she didn't like the version of herself she saw at the wedding." I stared at her for a second. That version has always been there. It didn't just show up. She knows that now. I nodded, but didn't say more. "You think you'll ever forgive her?" she asked, gently. "I don't know. Maybe. But not because she's going to therapy. That doesn't undo years of digs and jabs and making me feel like a failed project. She envies you, you know." I laughed. "Right. No, Dana. She does." "For what? My taxes? My takeout dinners? My cat?" "For not needing approval. For being able to stand on your own. Celia, she's always been performing. Her entire life. Even now." I leaned back in my chair, chewing on that thought more than the salad in front of me. Maybe Mom was right. Or maybe Celia had just grown too used to the spotlight to imagine life outside of it. About a month after the wedding, I got a package in the mail. No return address. No note. Inside was a small framed photo of the two of us as kids. I remembered it instantly. It was from a camping trip near Lake Tahoe. I was maybe 12. Celia would have been 6. She was clinging to my side in her oversized jacket, her cheeks rosy, grinning so wide her eyes were almost shut. I was looking down at her, mid-laugh. Behind us was a campfire. You could almost hear the crackling in the image. I hadn't seen that photo in over a decade. She'd kept it all this time. I set the frame on the mantel at the cottage. Not as a symbol of forgiveness. But maybe as a placeholder. A way of saying, we were once something good. We might be again. Not now. But maybe. Weeks turned into months. We didn't talk much. A few emails here and there. Updates on our dad's health. A forwarded article she thought I'd enjoy. Nothing heavy. Nothing about the wedding. Then, in mid-January, I got an email that surprised me. "Would you ever be open to coming with me? Just once. To the cottage. We don't have to talk about the past. We could just sit. Walk. Drink tea. Whatever." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply right away. But I didn't delete it either. I waited 3 days before replying to Celia's message. It wasn't to be dramatic. I just needed time to figure out whether I wanted to reopen that door, or keep it locked for good. I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. What I felt was something quieter, heavier. Like a part of me had finally stopped hoping she'd ever be different. And in that silence, there was peace. But then there was that photo. That cottage. That sliver of something real from our childhood that neither of us had truly let go of. So, I responded. One afternoon. That's all I'm offering. I'll be there Saturday. If you show up, you show up. If not, I'll be fine either way. She replied with just one word. Okay. Saturday came. It was cloudy, a low blanket of fog rolling in from the ocean as I drove the winding road to the cottage. I brought chamomile tea, a few biscotti, and an old blanket I'd kept from our grandmother's house. I didn't know if Celia would come. I didn't even know what I would say if she did. But at exactly 2:07 p.m., I heard her car crunch onto the gravel outside. She stepped out slowly. Dressed in jeans and a loose sweater. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked less like the glittering bride I'd last seen and more like the version of her I remembered from our childhood. Wary. But real. Hi, she said, approaching the steps. Tea? I asked, not moving from the porch swing. She nodded and sat down in the wicker chair across from me. We didn't speak for a while. Just sipped and watched the pine tree sway in the breeze. Finally, she broke the silence. I thought about selling my ring. I looked at her. Why? To buy you out of this place. I raised an eyebrow. Are you serious? Was. Not anymore. I know it's not mine. Not now. Maybe not ever. I nodded, slowly. That night, I felt like the worst version of myself, she continued. But I've realized. I didn't become that person that night. I'd been that person. For a long time. You were cruel, I said plainly. Not just at the wedding. 4 years. I know. I was always your punchline. She swallowed hard. I used to think that making fun of you made me feel better about myself. Did it? No. Not really. We sat with that for a moment. You had everything I didn't, she added. Calm. Confidence. You didn't chase people, you just were. That terrified me. Because I've spent my whole life performing and I don't know who I am without an audience. I let out a breath. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was truth. And that mattered. She left after an hour. No hugs. No grand promises. Just a quiet goodbye and a soft thank you. But the satisfying part came later. 2 months after that visit, I got an invitation in the mail. Noelle and Celia Bryant cordially invite you to our post-wedding celebration brunch and housewarming in Tiburon. It was printed on thick cardstock, cream with gold lettering. Very on brand. I was surprised they were still together, especially after what I knew about Noelle. He wasn't just smug, he was controlling, arrogant, and completely dismissive of Celia in every conversation I'd witnessed. I had my suspicions about the cracks in their relationship long before the wedding. But something about that invitation rubbed me the wrong way. I knew they weren't inviting me out of love. They were doing it for show. Because no matter how much work Celia claimed to be doing, some part of her still needed me as a prop. So, I RSVP'd. Yes. And I had a plan. When the day came, I wore a simple black dress, heels that made a quiet click on the polished floors, and a necklace that had belonged to our grandmother. Their house was what you'd expect, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern fixtures, a kitchen bigger than my entire apartment. The kind of place people pretend to be happy in. Celia greeted me with a stiff hug. Noelle nodded politely, clearly surprised I showed up. You look good, he said, tone almost admiring. Thanks, I replied coolly. So do you. Still performing? He didn't get the jab. Just smirked and moved on. Guests mingled. Wine flowed. Celia stood in the center of it all, laughing too loudly, her arm linked with Noelle's like a trophy. But I noticed the tension in her jaw. The way her fingers twitched when he interrupted her. I wandered into the den, where the gifts were piled. A glass coffee table displayed some of the more expensive items: designer cookware, luxury linens, a personalized cutting board etched with their initials. I set my gift on top. It was a neatly wrapped box, small and subtle, tied with a navy ribbon. Inside? A framed photo of the cottage, sunset spilling across the roofline, wildflowers in bloom, the windows glowing from within. And beside it, a note. This is a place that brings peace. Not everyone deserves it. I do. I didn't stay long after that. Later that night, I got a text from Celia. You really know how to make a point. And I replied with just this: I don't need to be chosen. I choose myself. Every time. That was the moment I knew I had finally, truly stepped out of the shadow she cast for decades. And unlike her, I didn't need a spotlight to feel seen. I had the keys to peace. Literally and metaphorically. Celia lost the one thing she couldn't manipulate: my quiet loyalty.